I sat in my car outside TechFlow Solutions, watching through the glass doors as chaos erupted inside. Security guards rushed past confused employees, while my ex-boss frantically waved his arms at a crowd of investors in expensive suits. I took a slow bite of the same crackers that got me fired 3 hours ago and smiled. The poison pill clause I had embedded in the company's core systems had just activated, reverting all ownership back to me. $20 million in stock value vanishing in real time. 6 months earlier, I was living my dream as senior software architect at TechFlow Solutions, a mid-sized company specializing in financial software for trading firms across the Midwest. My name is Ruthie, and at 28, I had already built the company's entire back-end infrastructure from scratch over 3 incredible years. Working closely with CEO Margaret Santos and the original team of 8 employees felt like being part of a family rather than just another corporate job. TechFlow's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower in downtown Chicago with panoramic views of Lake Michigan that never failed to inspire me during long coding sessions. The company culture was everything I had hoped for when I graduated from Northwestern with my computer science degree. People brought their dogs to work, collaborated freely across departments, and genuinely cared about each other's success. We had ping-pong tournaments during lunch breaks, celebrated every product launch with homemade cake, and maintained an open-door policy where anyone could approach Margaret with ideas or concerns. My daily routine began at 7 in the morning, arriving with a large coffee and a small breakfast that I would nibble while reviewing overnight server logs and security reports. My workspace reflected 3 years of careful personalization, a standing desk overlooking the skyline, 3 thriving snake plants that had grown from tiny cuttings, family photos from my younger brother's wedding in Wisconsin, and a small collection of vintage programming manuals that reminded me of my computer science professors. The work itself challenged and fulfilled me in ways I had never imagined possible. My specialty involved creating algorithms that could process massive amounts of financial data with lightning speed and absolute accuracy. The proprietary trading system I had developed gave TechFlow a significant competitive advantage, allowing our clients to execute transactions 30% faster than industry standards. Margaret often credited my innovations with the company's steady growth from 8 employees to 45. What I loved most was the collaborative atmosphere Margaret had cultivated. Engineers worked alongside marketing teams to understand client needs. Sales representatives joined technical meetings to better explain our capabilities, and everyone felt invested in our collective success. We shared victories and supported each other through challenges, creating an environment where creativity flourished and problems were solved through teamwork rather than hierarchy. My daily breakfast routine had become as natural as checking email or reviewing code commits. Whole grain crackers, sometimes with peanut butter, occasionally paired with fresh fruit, consumed while my mind processed the technical challenges ahead. Crumbs were carefully contained on a small plate, and I always kept my workspace clean and organized. This habit had never caused problems or complaints from colleagues, clients, or management during my entire tenure. Everything changed the day Margaret announced she was hiring Derek Hawthorne as operations director. She explained that our rapid growth required professional management structure and standardized workplace protocols to prepare for potential investors and expansion opportunities. Derek came highly recommended with an MBA from Wharton and experience implementing efficiency measures at several technology companies. His first day walkthrough began normally with Margaret introducing him to various departments and explaining our products and processes. Derek appeared professional and attentive, asking thoughtful questions about workflow optimization and resource allocation. His background in corporate consulting seemed promising, and several colleagues expressed optimism about potential improvements to our somewhat chaotic growth patterns. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when Derek reached my workstation during his tour. I was reviewing morning server performance metrics while eating whole grain crackers, a routine so ingrained that I barely registered his presence until he stopped directly beside my chair. His expression transformed from neutral observation to visible disgust as he watched a few crumbs fall near my keyboard. "Food consumption at workstations is unsanitary and unprofessional," he announced loudly enough for nearby colleagues to hear clearly. His tone carried the authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance with his directives. This practice ends immediately across all departments. I looked up from my screen, genuinely confused by the sudden proclamation. I've been eating breakfast at my desk for 3 years without any issues. I explained calmly, gesturing toward my carefully maintained workspace. It helps me stay focused during morning reviews, and I always keep everything clean. Derek's response sent a chill through the surrounding area that I could feel in my colleagues' sudden silence. 3 years of improper habits do not justify continuing them under professional management standards, he stated with cold finality. You will consume all meals and snacks in the designated break room or face progressive disciplinary action according to company policy. Several coworkers exchanged worried glances as Derek made detailed notes on his tablet, documenting what he clearly viewed as a serious violation. His presence transformed my comfortable workspace into an interrogation scene, with his scrutinizing gaze cataloging every personal item and organizational choice. The easy camaraderie that had defined our office culture seemed to evaporate under his disapproving stare. Furthermore, Derek continued, his voice carrying to other workstations, all employees should review their workspace compliance with professional standards. Personal items, food storage, and informal arrangements will be evaluated against industry best practices. He turned to address the broader area, ensuring his message reached everyone within earshot. Efficiency and professionalism begin with proper workplace discipline. After Derek moved on to complete his tour, my colleagues slowly returned to their tasks, but the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Sarah from marketing approached my desk with obvious concern, whispering that Derek's announcement felt unnecessarily harsh for such a minor issue. Tom from quality assurance mentioned that several other companies he knew allowed workplace eating without problems, suggesting Derek's standards might be unusually strict. The remainder of that first day passed with an underlying tension I had never experienced at TechFlow. Derek's presence loomed over normal activities, and people seemed more guarded in their interactions, uncertain about which established practices might suddenly be deemed unprofessional. The relaxed environment that had made TechFlow special was already showing cracks, and I realized this was only the beginning of significant changes ahead. That evening, I drove home to my apartment in Lincoln Park with a growing sense of unease about Derek's management philosophy and its potential impact on the workplace culture I treasured. His focus on compliance over collaboration suggested a fundamental shift in company priorities that might threaten everything that made TechFlow an exceptional place to work. The confrontation over breakfast crackers felt like a warning shot across the bow of our established way of doing business. The following weeks brought systematic dismantling of every aspect of TechFlow's culture that had made it special. Derek's transformation of our workplace began with seemingly minor policy changes that accumulated into a comprehensive restructuring of daily life. His efficiency initiatives replaced collaborative flexibility with rigid bureaucracy, turning our once vibrant office into a sterile corporate environment. Personal desk decorations were the first casualty of Derek's professional standards campaign. He issued a memo requiring removal of all personal photographs, plants, collectibles, and decorative items that did not serve direct business functions. My beloved snake plants were relegated to the break room, where they struggled in the fluorescent lighting. Family photos disappeared from desks throughout the office, replaced by company-issued motivational posters featuring generic business slogans. The productivity monitoring software Derek installed tracked every keystroke application usage and website visit with minute precision. Bathroom breaks exceeding 5 minutes triggered automated reports to management. Personal phone calls previously handled discreetly during slow periods became grounds for formal written warnings. The software generated daily efficiency scores for each employee, creating an atmosphere of constant surveillance and competition. Derek's rigid break schedule eliminated the natural ebb and flow of creative work. Lunch breaks were limited to exactly 30 minutes, regardless of project deadlines or collaborative needs. Coffee breaks required supervisor approval and were limited to 10 minutes twice daily. The flexible schedule that had allowed me to work during my most productive hours was replaced with mandatory 9-to-5 attendance, monitored by electronic badge scanners. Eating my crackers in the sterile break room became a daily reminder of how much had changed. The small windowless space could accommodate perhaps 8 people, uncomfortably forcing employees to eat in shifts like factory workers. Conversations were stilted and cautious, with people afraid their casual comments might be reported to Derek as unprofessional behavior. The camaraderie that had developed over shared meals at our desks evaporated completely. Derek's scrutiny of my work habits intensified beyond the initial breakfast confrontation. He began questioning my flexible arrival time, despite my consistent delivery of high-quality results and willingness to work late when projects demanded extra attention. During team meetings, he interrupted my technical explanations with comments about proper presentation standards and corporate communication protocols that had never been required before. His interference extended to project management decisions that had previously been my domain as senior architect. Derek insisted on approving all technical specifications, despite lacking the programming background to understand their implications. He demanded detailed written justifications for architectural choices that I had been making autonomously for 3 years. Simple decisions that once took minutes now required formal meetings and documentation. The breaking point arrived when Derek presented Margaret with fabricated productivity reports designed to undermine my reputation and job security. He had manipulated the monitoring software data by excluding my late-night emergency fixes and weekend system optimizations from performance calculations. Critical work I performed outside normal business hours to maintain system stability was ignored completely in his evaluations. Derek's reports painted me as distracted and inefficient, focusing exclusively on minor delays caused by server maintenance he had scheduled during peak development hours. He highlighted brief periods when I was researching solutions to complex problems as evidence of time wasting, ignoring the successful implementations that resulted from thorough preparation. The documentation presented to Margaret told a completely false story about my contributions and value to the company. Margaret's reaction to Derek's manipulated data devastated me more than his harassment ever could. She called me into her office with obvious discomfort, expressing concern about the productivity metrics and suggesting I needed to realign with evolving company expectations. Her tone was apologetic, but firm, clearly influenced by Derek's systematic campaign of misinformation about my performance. "I know you've been with us since the beginning," Margaret said, avoiding direct eye contact while reviewing Derek's fabricated reports. "But we need to ensure everyone adapts to our new professional standards. These numbers suggest there might be some focus issues we should address together." Her words felt like betrayal from someone who had witnessed my dedication firsthand for 3 years. The irony was crushing, because my actual performance had never been better. I had recently completed a major security upgrade 3 days ahead of schedule, implemented 2 client-requested features that generated significant revenue, and resolved 3 critical bugs that other developers could not diagnose. Derek's reports ignored these achievements entirely, creating a fictional narrative about declining productivity. That evening, while staying late to finish a project Derek's meetings had disrupted, I overheard a conversation that revealed the true scope of his ambitions. Through Margaret's partially open office door, I heard Derek speaking with board member Bradley Chen about the company's future direction and leadership needs. His words made clear that he viewed himself as Margaret's eventual replacement. "The company has grown beyond its startup phase," Derek was saying with confidence. "We need fresh perspectives and modern management approaches to compete effectively. Some of the legacy employees have outdated work habits that conflict with professional growth." His emphasis on legacy employees made clear he was targeting original team members like myself. Bradley's response was equally troubling. Margaret mentioned some performance concerns with key technical staff. "If productivity improvements don't materialize quickly, we may need to make difficult personnel decisions." The casual discussion of my job security by people who barely understood my contributions felt like a knife twist in an already painful situation. Derek's pattern became clear through my investigation of his employment history. His previous companies had experienced mass departures of talented employees following his arrival, typically followed by aggressive cost-cutting measures that prioritized short-term profits over long-term sustainability. He specialized in gaining management trust through efficiency rhetoric while systematically eliminating anyone who might challenge his authority or compete for advancement. The emotional toll of Derek's campaign affected every aspect of my life. Sleep became elusive as I worried about job security and the destruction of workplace relationships I had treasured. Appetite disappeared, making even my controversial crackers difficult to consume. Concentration suffered as Derek's surveillance and criticism created constant anxiety about every decision and action. My colleagues were experiencing similar stress under Derek's regime. Sarah from marketing confided that she was updating her resume after Derek criticized her client communication style as insufficiently formal. Tom, from quality assurance, mentioned that his innovative testing procedures were being replaced with bureaucratic checklists that missed critical issues. The creative energy that had driven TechFlow's success was being systematically suppressed, but I was not going to surrender without a fight. My computer science education had included courses on cybersecurity and system protection that most business managers never encountered. That night, I began researching poison pill clauses and similar protective mechanisms used in corporate acquisitions. The concept could be adapted to protect intellectual property and system ownership in hostile employment situations. The poison pill strategy would require careful implementation to remain undetectable while providing complete protection for my work. Hidden deep within the system architecture I had built, I could create fail-safes that would revert ownership of critical systems back to me if I was terminated improperly. Derek's business background would never recognize such technical subtleties. My determination to protect myself and my work led to careful investigation of Derek's true intentions and the implementation of defensive measures that would prove crucial in the coming confrontation. The evidence I uncovered revealed a systematic plan to steal my innovations and eliminate me from the company I had helped build from nothing. Derek's background check required considerable research, but the patterns I discovered were deeply troubling and entirely predictable. His previous position at DataSync Corporation had ended with the departure of 12 senior developers within 6 months of his arrival. The company's innovative culture was replaced with rigid hierarchies and bureaucratic procedures that stifled creativity and drove talent to competitors. Before DataSync, Derek had worked at Innovate Tech Solutions, where his efficiency initiatives resulted in a 40% staff turnover rate and the loss of 3 major clients who followed departing employees to new companies. His pattern was consistent gain management confidence through professional rhetoric, identify key employees as threats, then systematically undermine them while positioning himself as indispensable to future success. The most disturbing discovery involved his current activities at TechFlow. Derek was not simply implementing generic corporate policies, but actively pursuing a calculated strategy to acquire my proprietary work for his own benefit. Late-night investigation of system logs revealed unauthorized access to my development files with digital fingerprints leading directly back to his administrative account. Derek was copying sections of my revolutionary trading algorithm, the system that represented months of intensive work and formed the foundation of TechFlow's competitive advantage. The algorithm processed financial data 30% faster than existing solutions, incorporating innovative approaches to pattern recognition and transaction optimization that could transform electronic trading across multiple industries. Email fragments recovered from deleted file histories painted a clear picture of Derek's betrayal. He had contacted 3 rival companies, including Finance Max Corporation and Trade Tech Systems, offering to bring valuable intellectual property if they hired him as Chief Technology Officer. His communications described my algorithm as his own creation, promising to deliver complete specifications and implementation details within weeks of his hiring. The scope of Derek's deception extended beyond simple theft to include detailed plans for discrediting me and other original employees. His fabricated productivity reports were part of a comprehensive strategy to justify terminations while claiming credit for our innovations. He intended to present himself as a turnaround specialist who eliminated deadweight employees and salvaged valuable technology through superior management. Margaret's trust in Derek made her an unwitting accomplice in his scheme. Her focus on investor relations and business development left her vulnerable to his manipulation, especially when he presented professional-looking reports that confirmed her anxieties about scaling the company effectively. Derek exploited her desire for corporate legitimacy to gain authority over personnel decisions and technical operations. The emotional devastation of discovering Derek's plans was overwhelming. 3 years of dedication, innovation, and relationship building were being weaponized against me by someone who had been at the company for mere weeks. The trading algorithm represented countless hours of problem-solving and creativity, and seeing it stolen felt like watching someone claim my children as their own. Sleep became impossible as I processed the full scope of Derek's betrayal. The man who had criticized my breakfast habits was simultaneously stealing my life's work and planning my professional destruction. His public humiliation over crackers was merely the opening move in a campaign designed to justify my elimination while positioning himself to profit from my innovations. But Derek had made a critical miscalculation in targeting someone with my technical background and security knowledge. My computer science education at Northwestern had included comprehensive courses on system protection, digital forensics, and cybersecurity principles that most business managers never encountered. I understood how to create defensive mechanisms that would be invisible to someone with Derek's limited technical expertise. The poison pill concept, commonly used in corporate finance to prevent hostile takeovers, could be adapted to protect intellectual property and system ownership in employment situations. By embedding hidden code deep within the system architecture, I could create fail-safes that would revert ownership of critical systems back to me if specific termination conditions were met. Implementation of the poison pill required extraordinary care to remain undetectable while providing complete protection. The code needed to be buried within routine security protocols and system maintenance functions that Derek would never examine or understand. Every line had to appear legitimate to casual inspection while serving a completely different purpose. Working late into the night over several weeks, I gradually implemented the protective mechanism across TechFlow's entire infrastructure. The poison pill was triggered by specific termination conditions rather than simple employment status changes, ensuring it would only activate if I was fired for reasons that violated proper procedures or represented retaliation for protected activities. The system I created was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. If Derek terminated me for insubordination rather than legitimate performance issues, hidden code would begin executing across TechFlow's network infrastructure. Within an hour of improper termination, all proprietary systems, databases, and algorithms would revert to my personal credentials, effectively locking the company out of its own technology. Derek's surveillance and criticism actually provided cover for my defensive preparations. His focus on monitoring productivity and bathroom breaks meant he paid little attention to the technical work that remained my primary responsibility. While he obsessed over procedural compliance, I was implementing a protection system that would expose his theft and manipulation. The irony was perfect. Derek's effort to control and eliminate me had created the opportunity for his own destruction. His limited technical knowledge made him blind to the very real consequences of his actions, while his arrogance prevented him from recognizing the intelligence and capability of the person he was targeting. As I put the finishing touches on my poison pill implementation, I felt a mixture of anticipation and sadness about what was coming. TechFlow had been my professional home for 3 years, and the thought of its destruction was painful despite Derek's betrayal. But protecting my work and exposing his schemes was more important than preserving a workplace that no longer valued my contributions. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not only my future, but the fate of everyone who had built TechFlow alongside me. Derek's plan required my elimination to succeed, but my preparation would turn his weapon against him and reveal the truth about his manipulation and theft. Justice was coming hidden in lines of code that would execute with perfect precision when the moment arrived. Tuesday morning arrived with crystalline clarity as I prepared for what I suspected would be my final day at TechFlow. Derek's surveillance had intensified over the previous week, and his manufactured productivity reports had escalated to include recommendations for immediate disciplinary action. The trap was set, and I was ready to spring it. I arrived at exactly 7 o'clock with my usual coffee and a small container of whole grain crackers, knowing Derek was monitoring my every action through security cameras and productivity software. The office atmosphere was tense, with colleagues avoiding eye contact and speaking in hushed tones. Everyone could sense that something significant was building toward a climax. My morning routine proceeded exactly as it had for 3 years, with deliberate normalcy that masked the extraordinary preparation hidden beneath. I reviewed overnight server logs while nibbling crackers at my desk, noting with satisfaction that all systems were running smoothly. The poison pill code remained dormant, waiting for the specific trigger conditions that would unleash its devastating payload. Derek's approach at 10:15 was theatrical in its timing and presentation. He strode across the office floor with Margaret and a security guard in tow, clearly intending to create maximum visibility for what he viewed as his moment of triumph. His expression combined self-satisfaction with barely contained excitement as he prepared to eliminate his primary obstacle to complete control. This represents the final violation of clearly established workplace policies, Derek announced loudly enough for the entire office to hear every word. His voice carried the authority of someone who had been planning this moment for weeks. Despite repeated warnings about food consumption at workstations, you continue to demonstrate willful insubordination and disregard for professional standards. The humiliation was carefully orchestrated to serve multiple purposes. Derek wanted to establish his authority over workplace culture while creating a public example that would deter future resistance to his policies. His theatrical approach was designed to make other employees grateful they were not the target, while reinforcing his position as the arbiter of acceptable behavior. Margaret's discomfort was obvious as she delivered the termination decision, but her resolve remained firm under Derek's influence. "Ruthie, I'm genuinely sorry about this situation, but we cannot tolerate continued policy violations that undermine workplace professionalism," she said without meeting my eyes. "Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks of severance pay, and we appreciate your contributions to the company's development." The most devastating aspect was not the termination itself, but the destruction of relationships I had treasured for 3 years. Margaret's inability to look at me directly revealed how completely Derek had manipulated her perception of my value and behavior. The woman who had celebrated my innovations and relied on my expertise now viewed me as a problem employee who needed to be removed. Derek's insistence on a security escort was the ultimate degradation designed to maximize humiliation while establishing his complete dominance over the situation. Professional transitions require proper protocols to protect company assets and maintain workplace security. He explained to nearby employees, making clear that my departure should be viewed as a potential threat rather than a loss. The walk to my desk for personal belongings became a perp walk through colleagues who watched in stunned silence. Tom from Quality Assurance shook his head in obvious disbelief, while Sarah from Marketing looked close to tears. Everyone understood that my termination represented a fundamental shift in company culture, but no one dared speak up with Derek and security present. Derek's commentary during the packing process was calculated to reinforce his narrative about professional standards and accountability measures. When I accidentally dropped a family photo while clearing my desk, he made a loud joke about clumsy work habits that drew nervous laughter from several nearby employees. His cruelty was designed to make my humiliation complete while establishing his version of events. This outcome demonstrates the importance of clear expectations and consistent enforcement of workplace policies, Derek proclaimed as I gathered my belongings under security supervision. Professional environments require professional behavior, and exceptions cannot be made for personal convenience or established habits. His speech was directed at the broader office, as much as at me. The escort past my colleagues toward the building exit felt like a funeral march for everything TechFlow had once represented. The collaborative, supportive culture that had made the company special was dying with each step replaced by Derek's vision of efficiency through fear and rigid compliance. My departure would signal to everyone that friendship and loyalty meant nothing under the new regime. But Derek had made the precise mistake I had hoped for in my preparation. His termination of me for insubordination rather than performance issues triggered the specific conditions I had programmed into the poison pill system. The legal distinction was crucial. Firing someone for policy violations rather than work quality activated different employment protections, and in this case, my hidden defense mechanism. As HR processed my termination in the company system, hidden code began its countdown sequence across TechFlow's entire infrastructure. I had programmed the poison pill to activate 47 minutes after official termination processing, providing enough time for me to leave the building before chaos erupted. The delay would also ensure that Derek's responsibility for the consequences was absolutely clear. Sitting in my car in the parking garage, I watched the digital clock on my dashboard count down to the moment of reckoning. Derek's arrogance had blinded him to the technical realities of targeting someone with my expertise and preparation. His focus on control and humiliation had prevented him from considering the possibility that his victim might fight back with weapons he could not detect or understand. The 47-minute countdown felt like both an eternity and an instant as I processed the emotional weight of what was about to unfold. 3 years of my professional life were ending in betrayal and humiliation, but Derek's scheme was about to collapse under the weight of his own ignorance and greed. Justice was coming, delivered through lines of code that would execute with perfect, devastating precision. At exactly 47 minutes after my termination, the poison pill activated silently across TechFlow's network infrastructure. Hidden processes began executing throughout the system, initiating a cascade that would revert ownership of all proprietary systems, databases, and algorithms back to my personal credentials. Derek had fired the one person who truly understood TechFlow's technical foundation, and now he was about to learn the consequences of his betrayal. The revenge was about to begin, delivered not through dramatic confrontation, but through the inexorable logic of code that recognized no authority except the person who had created it. Derek's moment of triumph was about to become his professional catastrophe, and I was going to watch every second of his destruction from the safety of my car. At 11:30, TechFlow's main servers began experiencing mysterious authentication failures that would escalate into complete system collapse within hours. The poison pill activated exactly as programmed, beginning a cascade of technical failures that would expose Derek's incompetence and reveal the true scope of his betrayal to everyone who had trusted his professional facade. The trading algorithm that had processed thousands of transactions flawlessly for months suddenly stopped responding to client queries. Database connections began timing out across multiple servers, displaying error messages that none of the remaining technical staff could interpret or resolve. The financial reporting system that generated daily revenue summaries became completely inaccessible, showing only cryptic authentication warnings. Derek's initial reaction was dismissive and confident, reflecting his complete ignorance of the technical complexity underlying TechFlow's operations. He assigned junior developers Jake Patterson and Emma Rodriguez to investigate what he characterized as routine technical difficulties that would be resolved quickly through proper troubleshooting procedures. His casual attitude demonstrated how little he understood about the systems he had just inherited. The timing could not have been worse for Margaret and the company's future prospects. She was presenting to a group of potential investors worth $50 million in the main conference room, demonstrating the revolutionary trading algorithm that would secure TechFlow's expansion funding and market position. The presentation represented months of preparation and the culmination of years of relationship building with key financial partners. As Margaret clicked through her carefully prepared slides, every system demonstration failed spectacularly. The algorithm that had impressed beta testers with its speed and accuracy now showed only blank screens and timeout errors. Client portfolio displays that had loaded instantly during rehearsals remained frozen on loading screens that never resolved. The competitive advantage that justified TechFlow's valuation had vanished completely. Investor Bradley Chen's patience evaporated quickly as Margaret struggled to explain the technical difficulties while maintaining professional composure. His expression shifted from interested anticipation to skeptical concern as demonstration after demonstration failed to load properly. The other investors began checking their phones and exchanging meaningful glances that suggested declining confidence in TechFlow's technical capabilities. Margaret's attempts to show backup demonstrations also failed completely, revealing the comprehensive nature of the system collapse. Every piece of technology Ruthie had built was now locked behind authentication protocols that recognized only her credentials. The client management system, the proprietary trading algorithms, the financial analytics platform, and even basic database access were completely inaccessible to current employees. Derek burst into the conference room during Margaret's failed presentation, whispering urgently about catastrophic system failures and possible cyber attacks from external sources. His theatrical concern was designed to project leadership during a crisis while deflecting responsibility for the technical breakdown. He assured the investors that TechFlow's capable IT team would resolve everything within hours, demonstrating complete ignorance of the situation's scope. The junior developers Derek had assigned to diagnose the problems returned with increasingly devastating reports throughout the morning. Jake Patterson, fresh from college with a computer science degree, admitted that the system architecture was far more complex than anyone had realized. Emma Rodriguez, hired just 3 months earlier, reported that every attempt to restore access had failed because they could not bypass the authentication requirements. By noon, the technical crisis had escalated into a full-blown business emergency that threatened TechFlow's survival. Client trading operations were suspended indefinitely, costing the company thousands of dollars per hour in lost revenue and damaged relationships. Customer service phones rang continuously, with complaints about inaccessible accounts and failed transactions that could not be resolved or explained. Margaret found herself fielding angry calls from existing investors while trying to salvage the failed presentation with potential new partners. The morning that was supposed to secure TechFlow's future had instead raised serious questions about the company's technical competence and business stability. Stock prices for comparable companies began rising as traders anticipated client defections from TechFlow's platform. Derek's panic became increasingly obvious as the scope of the crisis exceeded his ability to manage or understand. His confidence evaporated as he realized that none of the remaining employees could restore access to systems that generated the majority of company revenue. The technical infrastructure he had dismissed as routine business overhead was actually the foundation upon which TechFlow's entire value proposition rested. The most devastating revelation came when Jake Patterson reported that Ruthie's code was interwoven throughout every critical system function. Her architectural decisions were not simply technical preferences, but fundamental design choices that affected every aspect of company operations. Without her access credentials and intimate knowledge of the system logic, restoration efforts were essentially impossible. Derek's face went pale as he began to comprehend the magnitude of his miscalculation in targeting Ruthie for termination. Her breakfast crackers had been a convenient excuse for eliminating someone he viewed as an obstacle to his advancement, but her technical expertise was irreplaceable. His focus on corporate control had blinded him to the operational realities that made such control valuable. Meanwhile, I sat in a coffee shop across the street from TechFlow's office building, monitoring the chaos through security cameras I had maintained access to during my system design. My laptop displayed real-time alerts about server failures, authentication errors, and database timeouts that painted a comprehensive picture of Derek's growing nightmare. The revenge was unfolding exactly as I had programmed it to occur. News alerts began appearing on financial websites about TechFlow's technical difficulties and the suspension of trading operations. Industry analysts speculated about the cause of the failures and their potential impact on client confidence. The company's reputation for technical innovation was being replaced with concerns about system reliability and business continuity. Derek's efforts to maintain control of the situation only made things worse as his technical ignorance became obvious to employees and observers. His instructions to restore backups demonstrated that he did not understand how authentication systems worked or why his commands could not be implemented. The authority he had wielded so effectively in personnel matters was useless against technical problems that required actual expertise. The collapse was accelerating beyond Derek's ability to manage or comprehend, exactly as I had designed it to unfold. His moment of triumph over workplace crackers was becoming a professional catastrophe that would expose his manipulation and theft while destroying his credibility with everyone who had trusted his corporate efficiency rhetoric. Justice was being served one failed system at a time, delivered through code that executed with perfect, relentless precision. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, TechFlow was experiencing complete organizational meltdown as the poison pill expanded beyond simple system access to reveal Derek's hidden activities through executive oversight protocols I had embedded months earlier. The automated reporting systems began surfacing comprehensive evidence of his corporate espionage, data theft, and systematic manipulation of company personnel. Margaret received an encrypted email marked Executive Emergency Alert, containing detailed documentation of Derek's unauthorized activities and communications with competitor companies. The evidence package included screenshots of his meetings with rival firms, copies of stolen code stored on his personal devices, and chat logs, where he bragged about eliminating legacy employees to acquire valuable intellectual property for personal profit. The revelation hit Margaret like a physical blow that left her struggling to process the scope of Derek's betrayal. She had trusted his professional credentials and corporate efficiency rhetoric, never suspecting that his systematic targeting of original employees was part of a calculated strategy to steal company assets. The productivity reports showing my declining performance were completely fabricated, designed to justify my elimination, while he positioned himself to profit from my innovations. Derek's communications with Finance Max Corporation revealed the true motivation behind his workplace policy enforcement and personnel decisions. He had been promised a $2 million signing bonus in exchange for delivering TechFlow's proprietary trading algorithm and client database. His termination of me was not about crackers or productivity, but about removing the person most likely to detect and prevent his theft of intellectual property. The forensic evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Derek's personal laptop contained copies of my algorithm code, client contact information, and detailed technical specifications that he had no legitimate reason to possess. His email correspondence included specific commitments to deliver proprietary technology within days of securing his new position at Finance Max Corporation. Margaret's confrontation with Derek in her office was visible through the glass walls to employees throughout the building. Her fury was obvious as she displayed the evidence of his betrayal on her computer screen, while Derek attempted to deny and deflect responsibility. His confident demeanor cracked completely as he realized the comprehensive nature of his exposure and the impossibility of maintaining his lies. The timing of the revelation coincided perfectly with the ongoing system crisis, making Derek's responsibility for both disasters absolutely clear to everyone involved. His elimination of the company's primary technical architect had crippled operations at the exact moment his theft of proprietary information was being exposed. The two crises were not coincidental, but directly connected through his calculated strategy. Bradley Chen and the other investors conducted their own emergency investigation as news of the technical failures spread throughout the financial industry. Their preliminary findings suggested that TechFlow's primary value lay in proprietary systems that were now completely inaccessible, potentially rendering their planned investment worthless. The company's competitive advantage had vanished, along with access to the technology that created it. TechFlow's stock price plummeted as competitors began circling like vultures, contacting clients about transferring their accounts to more stable platforms. 3 major customers canceled contracts within hours, citing concerns about system reliability and data security. The technical breakdown was becoming an existential threat to company survival, exactly as I had intended when designing the poison pill response. Derek's attempts at damage control only accelerated his professional destruction as his lies became increasingly obvious under scrutiny. He could not explain why critical systems had failed immediately after my termination, especially when other employees confirmed my exceptional technical skills and dedication. His fabricated performance reviews crumbled when compared to actual project deliverables and client feedback. The breaking point came when Margaret discovered Derek's signed contract with Finance Max Corporation, promising delivery of TechFlow's trading algorithm in exchange for his hiring as Chief Technology Officer. The document proved that his entire employment at TechFlow was a fraud designed to steal proprietary technology for competitor benefit. His efficiency initiatives were cover for industrial espionage on a massive scale. Employee reactions ranged from shock to outrage as details of Derek's betrayal spread throughout the office. Tom from Quality Assurance expressed disbelief that someone would systematically destroy a company from within while claiming to improve its operations. Sarah from Marketing was horrified to learn that her performance reviews had been manipulated to justify potential termination as part of Derek's broader scheme. The human cost of Derek's betrayal became clear as employees realized how his policies had damaged workplace relationships and professional development opportunities. His rigid hierarchy and surveillance systems were not intended to improve efficiency, but to establish control that would facilitate his theft. Every policy change had served his personal agenda rather than company interests. Margaret called an emergency board meeting to address Derek's betrayal and the company's existential crisis, but Derek had already fled the building when he realized the scope of his exposure. His departure left behind a company in complete disarray, with critical systems inaccessible and key relationships damaged beyond easy repair. The efficiency expert had created chaos that threatened to destroy everything TechFlow had built. The board meeting convened in an atmosphere of crisis and recrimination, as members tried to understand how Derek's scheme had succeeded so completely. His professional credentials and corporate rhetoric had masked a calculated strategy to steal company assets while eliminating anyone capable of detecting his fraud. The due diligence process had failed to identify his pattern of corporate sabotage at previous companies. Bradley Chen led the investor response with demands for immediate action to restore system access and recover stolen intellectual property. His fury at Derek's deception was matched by concern about TechFlow's ability to survive the technical and financial crisis. The company needed to restore operations quickly or face complete business collapse and potential legal liability to clients. The irony was perfect and devastating. Derek's effort to steal TechFlow's technology had destroyed the very systems that made the technology valuable. His elimination of me had crippled the company's ability to operate or compete effectively. The poison pill had turned his weapon against him, exposing his crimes while rendering his theft worthless through technical sabotage. Margaret's assistant began calling my phone with desperate urgency as the scope of the crisis became clear to company leadership. They needed my expertise to restore operations and my cooperation to pursue legal action against Derek. The woman who had fired me for eating crackers was about to discover that her company's survival depended entirely on my willingness to forgive and return. Margaret's voice cracked with desperation when she finally reached me on my cell phone at 3:30 that afternoon. "Ruthie, please, I need to see you immediately," she said, her usual professional composure completely shattered. "I know what Derek did to you, to all of us. I know how terribly wrong I was. Can you meet with me right now? The company is collapsing and you're the only person who can save it." The admission of fault was exactly what I had hoped to hear, but I was not going to make Margaret's path to redemption easy after the humiliation and betrayal I had endured. "I'm willing to meet," I replied calmly, "but it will be at the coffee shop across from your office, and you'll need to come alone. No security guards, no witnesses, just you and me having an honest conversation about what happened and what you're prepared to do about it." Margaret agreed without hesitation, her desperation overriding any concerns about meeting on my terms rather than hers. I selected a corner table at the coffee shop where we could speak privately, while I maintained visual contact with TechFlow's office building. Through the windows, I could see employees gathering in confused clusters as the technical crisis continued to escalate throughout the afternoon. When Margaret arrived 20 minutes later, her appearance shocked me with its transformation from the confident executive I had known for 3 years. Dark circles under her eyes, trembling hands, and wrinkled clothing revealed the emotional weight of losing everything she had built. Her usual perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and her makeup could not hide the stress lines that had appeared in the span of a few hours. She began with the most heartfelt apology I had ever received from any employer, taking full responsibility for her failure to investigate Derek's claims and her betrayal of our 3-year working relationship. "I should have trusted you instead of him," Margaret said with tears forming in her eyes. "You built this company with me from nothing, and I let a stranger convince me that you were the problem. I failed as a leader, as a friend, and as a human being." The folder she slid across the table contained a comprehensive offer that exceeded my wildest expectations for professional recognition and financial compensation. Chief Technology Officer position with complete autonomy over technical operations, 40% equity stake in the company, guaranteed board representation, and ironclad protections against future interference in technical decisions. The equity percentage alone was worth millions if TechFlow could recover from Derek's sabotage. This is more than I ever dreamed of receiving. I admitted studying the contract terms carefully, but the title and money aren't enough to repair the damage that's been done. I have conditions that must be met before I'll consider returning to clean up Derek's mess. Margaret nodded eagerly, prepared to accept whatever demands I made to secure my cooperation in saving the company. First, every employee Derek targeted or mistreated gets restored to their previous position with full back pay and formal written apologies, I stated firmly. Second, we implement completely transparent performance metrics that cannot be manipulated by management for personal or political purposes. Third, we rebuild the company culture based on mutual respect and collaborative innovation, not fear-based compliance and surveillance. Margaret agreed to every condition, immediately recognizing that my demands were entirely reasonable given the circumstances. We'll also remove all of Derek's monitoring software and policy changes, she added voluntarily. The company culture you helped create was what made us successful, and I want to restore that environment completely. Your judgment about workplace policies and technical operations will be final and unchallengeable. The restoration process began that evening with my return to TechFlow's offices to assess the damage and implement recovery procedures. The poison pill system I had created included recovery protocols I had hoped never to use, designed to restore all systems systematically once proper leadership and respect were demonstrated. As I entered my access credentials, TechFlow's infrastructure began coming back online with remarkable efficiency. The technical recovery was actually the easy part of the restoration process. Database connections were re-established within minutes, trading algorithms, resumed processing client transactions, and financial reporting systems began generating current data. The harder work involved rebuilding trust and morale among employees who had witnessed Derek's betrayal and the company's near collapse. Derek's consequences extended far beyond simply losing his job at TechFlow. Margaret had documented his corporate espionage and theft, comprehensively leading to criminal charges for stealing trade secrets and wire fraud. Finance Max Corporation canceled their employment offer when they learned about his fraudulent claims and potential legal liability. His reputation in the technology industry was permanently destroyed through legal proceedings and professional networks. The FBI investigation into Derek's activities revealed similar patterns at his previous companies, resulting in additional charges for a multi-year scheme of corporate theft and employee manipulation. His MBA credentials could not protect him from federal prosecution for intellectual property crimes that carried potential prison sentences. The efficiency expert was facing bankruptcy and imprisonment as consequences for his calculated betrayal. Company recovery exceeded everyone's expectations once Derek's toxic influence was eliminated and proper leadership was restored. The failed investor presentation was rescheduled for the following month, and this time every demonstration worked flawlessly with additional improvements I had developed during my brief unemployment. Bradley Chen increased his investment offer by 20%, impressed by TechFlow's technical resilience and my leadership capabilities. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new corner office with panoramic views of Lake Michigan, enjoying a proper lunch while reviewing TechFlow's remarkable achievements under my technical leadership. The company had doubled in size to 90 employees, launched 3 innovative products that dominated their market segments, and established partnerships with major financial institutions worldwide. My trading algorithm had become the industry standard, generating millions in licensing revenue. The personal vindication was deeply satisfying, but the broader lessons were more important for my long-term happiness and professional development. Derek's betrayal had taught me that protecting my work and standing up for my values were not acts of aggression, but essential acts of self-respect. Preparation for the worst while hoping for the best had enabled me to survive his attack and emerge stronger than before. The human relationships that had been damaged by Derek's manipulation were gradually healing as employees rediscovered the collaborative culture that had made TechFlow special. Tom from Quality Assurance was promoted to Senior Testing Architect. Sarah from Marketing became Client Relations Director, and every person Derek had targeted was thriving under the restored environment of mutual respect and professional growth. Margaret and I had rebuilt our working relationship on a foundation of complete honesty and shared commitment to the company's original values. Her experience with Derek had taught her to value loyalty and competence over corporate rhetoric and professional credentials. The CEO position remained hers, but technical decisions were entirely my domain, creating a partnership that leveraged our complementary strengths effectively. The most meaningful aspect of my restoration was the opportunity to mentor a new generation of developers who would never experience the kind of workplace toxicity Derek had created. I taught them not just programming techniques and system architecture, but the importance of protecting their innovations and standing up for their principles when faced with manipulation or theft. I kept a small container of whole grain crackers on my desk as a permanent reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of defiance can lead to the greatest victories. The crackers that Derek had used to justify my humiliation became symbols of the integrity and self-respect that ultimately enabled my triumph over his schemes. The story's conclusion demonstrated that justice may be delayed, but cannot be denied when preparation meets opportunity and moral courage confronts systematic betrayal. Derek's temporary victory had become permanent defeat, while my apparent defeat had transformed into complete vindication and professional success beyond my original dreams. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up for your principles seemed like a small thing, but led to much bigger consequences? Sometimes the tiniest acts of resistance can change everything. Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if you believe that justice eventually finds a way to prevail. Subscribe for more stories about real people overcoming workplace betrayal and achieving the success they deserve. And please share this with someone who needs to know that fighting back against unfairness can lead to incredible victories. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your integrity and talents are worth protecting, no matter how small the initial conflict might seem.